Welcome to Cam's Corner, where we discuss football every time on time. And this broadcast is brought to you by Zackadoos, where you can fill your chicken tender cravings. It's nothing like the tender taste and warm feeling of a 4-piece tender dinner that Zackadoos can give you. Shout out to Zackadoos. So, on Cam's Corner, you guys know, we released an episode maybe a couple months ago on YouTube about Jalen Hurts. This is a football channel, a football program, and you'll be hearing a lot of football today. Not the great stuff, not the good stuff, kind of the sad stuff. We're talking about injuries today. And when you're talking about injuries have always been a part of football. And really all sports, when you consider the physical nature, guys running and jumping, sports are a physical thing. But some injuries, in my opinion, are milestones in the game and won't ever be forgotten. I'm not talking about sprained ankles, broken thumbs, or even broken limbs. I'm talking about cardiac arrest cases like Damar Hamlin. I'm talking the concussion case of Tua Tagovailoa. And maybe the concussion case of Antonio Brown. I know concussions are a serious thing, but and he was never diagnosed, so that's not, politically correct, but we can all agree that he does, a bit of reckless activity, and it's all after that one hit, so we're going to stay on topic here. But to me, in most recent years, the most prevalent injury that has happened in the NFL, as sad as that Damar Hamlin injury was, it was to the young and upcoming star, Ryan Shazier. So in this episode, we'll be taking a deep dive into the injury and tragedy that happened to Steelers linebacker Ryan Shazier on December 4th, 2017. We'll also go into Shazier's injury and how it shaped the landscape for tackling, not just in the NFL, but in all ages and all levels of football, and how targeting is called in football today. Not to mention, we'll go into the injury causing the concussion crisis, which I believe this injury caused the concussion crisis, and worry to, elevate the sport of football after seeing someone like this get hurt in this type of way. Before we take that quick dive, we'll have a quick word from our sponsors at Mellow Mushroom Pizza. If you're feeling mellow, get you a pizza. You'll feel a lot better. Mellow Mushroom, the pizza for you. So what's crazy and what's kind of sad about the whole injury to Ryan Shazier is people like to skip right to December 4th when talking about Ryan Shazier. They don't like to go back and give him his flowers of how good and how promising of a linebacker he really was. For starters, this is a guy who recorded 210 solo tackles, 317 total tackles, and 45 and a half tackles for loss in his 3 years at Ohio State. So this is Big Ten football. This isn't ACC football. He did this in the conference second to the SEC, that institution that's majorly good, all talent at Ohio State. So coming into the draft into 2014, Shazier was on a ton of NFL scout draft boards, and he ended up landing with the Pittsburgh Steelers with the 15th overall pick, as we all know. Coming into the league, Shazier was a perfect fit for Pittsburgh. I mean, hand in a glove. The culture that Coach Mike Tomlin sets up for everyone who reps the black and yellow, he was meant for that. Not to mention, he was a heck of a linebacker. Before he gets hurt again on that faithful December 4th day, he had 202 solo tackles, 97 assisted tackles, 7 sacks, 7 interceptions, and was selected to play in 2 Pro Bowls before his injury. Just to put it in perspective, that Shazier was playing at an elite level through the years of 2015 and 2017. And you have to think about it. I know that linebackers may not be the commodity or the thing everyone watches in the NFL, but in 2015 through 2017, there were great linebackers in the NFL. I'm talking about guys like Luke Kuechly, who was a Hall of Famer, who should be a Hall of Famer. I mean, I believe he will be. Patrick Willis, Bobby Wagner were on the scene, and Shazier's stats were holding candles to these guys. Shazier was right in the mix of being just as good as all of these guys in a shorter amount of time, until his spinal injury from the hit he attempted would change football forever. Shazier's injury impacted tackling in all levels of football. So almost directly after the incident that left Shazier paralyzed, Sports Illustrated goes to multiple high school football teams to talk to coaches about Shazier's injury. These high schools included Quaker Valley High, that was just outside of Pittsburgh, Trinity High School in Texas, Cleveland High in Minnesota, and South Point High in South Carolina. And to tell you guys the truth, most of these guys were reiterating the same thing. Shazier had his head down. We're teaching our kids that they should be shoulders up and they should see what they hit. Teams also around this time started to participate in USA's football heads up program. You know, I personally played football myself. I'm not saying I'm this gigantic linebacker like Shazier or any of these guys, but you have to think about it. There were drills sometimes where we were tackling a different way, trying to change the entire format that we were taught since kids. And I believe that, you know, especially in the earlier 2000s, maybe like 2010s, I would say that kids are just running full speed ahead trying to tackle someone. There was no form to it. But after this Shazier injury, I believe that really all changed. People were focusing more on heads up. That's why you have these programs. And another thing that you saw in the NFL after the Shazier injury was the big hitters in the NFL slowly became a dying breed. Historically, football's big hitters on the defensive side are highly celebrated and feared, but forever remembered. From Sean Taylor, Brian Dawkins, Cam Chancellor, even guys like Ray Lewis. They really didn't have any form to their hits. You just know if you got hit by them, you probably weren't getting up. That was the thing. And there was no heads up. You know, these guys were running dead right into each other. And when you look at the talent of Shazier, he fits the mold of these high-flying guys, these high-flying big hitters. But after the events of those injuries, those guys and archetypes, like I said before, slowly faded away. What player or other players are just afraid to cross the field nowadays? I don't believe that exists anymore in the NFL. And you know the main cause of that is what happened to Shazier, because the rules started to change. Which leads us right into our next reason why Ryan's injury was bigger than what most people make of it. It inspired rule changes in the NFL. Following year after Shazier's injury, the NFL input a new rule stating that if a defender leads with his head at an offensive player, it would result in a 15-yard penalty. Now, you know, I'll have to play devil's advocate on this, but now, why is this penalty not for both sides? Why is it just defensive? It's part of the main reason defense doesn't exist in football anymore. We'll get back to Shazier. It seems like everything in the sport of football has been toned down to an extreme amount. I totally understand that, you know, this is America's sport, in my opinion, and has gotten turned down a majority due to Shazier's injury. Now, I'm definitely not here to blame Shazier for ruining the game of football, because in all honesty, I do believe his injury was a freak accident, but ever since that injury, football has just not looked or felt the same. These rules have also let offenses dominate the game of football. Remember the old saying, defense wins championships? I don't see how you can watch football now with the rules and stipulations for defense and say that with a straight face. Yes, player safety is up with head injuries, but it seems like every little thing defenders do now can result in a 15-yard penalty or disqualification from the game. And it's like that because Shazier's injury was on primetime TV, Monday Night Football, one of the most viewed programs on Monday, period. Meaning that mothers and fathers saw what happened to Shazier and were petrified of letting their children play the sport of football, which will lead us to the next reason why I believe Shazier's injury changed football in a colossal way. I said before, millions of people, and I'm sure thousands of parents, saw the injury that happened in live time. Football, even before the Shazier injury, was getting its reputation tarnished a little, in my opinion. I know we're discussing the career of Ryan Shazier, but do you guys remember Chris Borland? The outstanding rookie linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers that retired prematurely into his career after being concerned about the risk of football and concussions could do to his life. And again, Borland was no scrub. He was an up-and-coming linebacker just like Shazier, but left the game before anything could happen to him, possibly. Football fans and parents watching both of these events occur had to be thinking, man, Borland might have been right about all this stuff. All with the grim image of Ryan Shazier reaching for his back as his movements become impaired due to a hit. Another slight was taken at the sport in 2015 with the film Concussion. You know, Tell the Truth. The movie starring Will Smith as he breaks down head trauma and how it continually happens during the game of football. And how he also describes the NFL didn't want to hear the information he had to present, and it resulted to players' safety issues and players after they've played the game wanting to do things as commit suicide, sad as that is. And you think about it, bam, in 2017, a couple years after that movie, you see a man paralyzed in the same game. Shazier's injury might not have started the fire for NFL safety, but it ignited the flame to volumes that changed the game of football forever. This has been an episode of Camp's Corner. Thank you guys so much for listening.